We all have desires, and I guess that's one of my desires is to have live praise music every Sunday. But we all have desires, don't we? And I want you to think about some of your desires that you have. Sometimes you may call them a dream. I have dreams in my life, right? We may have them call them life plans. There's a big thing a while back, and people still do that, call them life boards. And you have a board, and you put all the things you want to do in your life, and it keeps you focused and keeps your vision out there, your vision board, and you're seeing, looking at things ahead. And so we all have desires. Without desires, without plans, without vision, without looking ahead, I think we probably wouldn't accomplish much in life. Our desires not only determine the direction of our lives, they also reveal our motives and our priority. So if you look at your desires, stop and go, why do I desire that? So as a young kid, I always wanted to own my own car dealership. And you say, well, why? What was the motive behind that? Well, my dad sold cars, and my goal was that I would own my own dealership. My dad would work for me, and I would get to write his paycheck. That was my goal. And as a young kid, that was a pretty reasonable goal, right? So what was the motive behind that? Well, why did I want to write my dad's paycheck? Right? Because I wanted to be his boss, because he was bossy to me when I was little, and I wanted to be his boss when I got older. So there's always, our desires typically will show off or outline and shine a spotlight on our motives and our plans and kind of our priorities in life. Without desires, we would sit around and do nothing, because it's our desires in our mind and our heart that drives us to the life that we live. Now, whether they're good or they're bad desires, whether they're good or bad dreams, we all have them. Whether they're righteous desires or unrighteous desires, we all have them. Even God has desires. For instance, he desires that all men be saved. Look at 1 Timothy 3:4. For this is a good and acceptable in the sight of God our Savior, who desires all men to be saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth. That is God's desire. He has a beautiful, wonderful desire. He desires for each and every living human being to be saved. If something is his desire for me, if he desires this for me, and desires the same thing for you, it must be the best for me. And so if I say, well, he desires us all to be saved, and you go, right, so that must be the best for me. Well, that's an obvious one. But there's some other desires that God has, and we think, well, I don't really like that desire that God has, because we may not line up with our desire, right? And so, but his desires are always for me. If it is his desires, it will always be good. It may not look good to you, it may not feel good to you, but if it's God's desires, it will always be good. How many of you have heard this statement? God will give you the desires of your heart. Ever heard that statement, right? God will give you the desires of your heart. It's found in Psalms 37:4, and it's one of the most misused and overused verses of the Bible, and we don't usually hear the entire verse. We have this idea that we are created with the ability to dream and to plan, dream big and shoot for the stars, we're told. And God will give us the desires. It's like a Christmas wish list. I remember growing up, we had the Sears Christmas catalog. It was like this big, wasn't it? And you go through, and we would circle, and we would flag down a little page there. And because there's 4 of us boys, we would have to put our initial next to it. And mine would be BEA. And I looked at it like, why my mom initials make me a girl's name? Because I had another brother that does B as well and BA as well. So his middle name was S. So he had to put BSA. And so I like B much better than his BSA. So we'd always have to put our initials on there, and my mom would go through and she would look at what she's going to give us for Christmas, right? And we had to do little things and big things, a Christmas wish list. Well, sometimes we do the same thing for God. God, I circled it and flagged the page for you. These are my desires. Give me the desires of my heart. It says right there in Psalm 37:4. And then what happens when our dreams, our desires are not fulfilled? We get angry with God and begin to doubt him maybe. Or we say, he's not giving the desires of my heart. I must not be praying right. I must not be living right. Or maybe I'm not doing the right things in my life. And so maybe if I obey him more and I say the prayer harder, you know, pray harder, you squint harder. I say pray harder. I don't know, pray hard. Like, I'm not sure if to pray hard, like saying it one way and then squinting harder, it makes it any better, but it seems like it is, you know. So maybe if we pray harder, right, or we obey him better, he'll give us desires more, right? And then if that doesn't work, we say, I prayed hard, I even squinted my eyes really hard, I worked harder, I served him harder, and I still didn't get the desires of my heart. So God didn't give them to me, so God doesn't keep his promises. And some even take it to the next level. I don't even want to follow God anymore. I don't even know if I believe in God anymore. Know this today. Nowhere in Scripture does God tell us that we can dream all we can imagine and he will fulfill it in us. Doesn't say that. If that were the case, men who were stronger in their faith than you, think about Paul, right? Peter, Timothy, John, Titus, all those guys, right? They would have gotten exactly what they wanted, but they didn't. Most of them died horrible deaths. John ended up living the end of his life in isolation, in jail, imprisoned on an island. We need to understand this thought that we can have wrong desires, desires that are not godly or not God-driven. And he will not give them to us if we're praying right. So think about that. If we're praying something, God, give me this desire. I really want it. You're going to give me the desires of my heart. And God goes, that's not a good desire for you. That's not going to end well for you. That's not a good thing for you. Or maybe it's good, but it's not what I want good in your life. It's a good thing. Like pastors will say, well, I desire to have a big, huge, giant church and lots of people coming to church. That's my desire. And so God's going to give me the desires of my heart. But maybe that pastor's not good at a big church. Maybe that's not what God wants out of that church. Right? So it sounds good because it sounds like it's a good godly thing, but it may not be exactly what God wants. He may allow it to happen to us, right? Because we are constantly trying to manipulate God into getting what we want. That happens sometimes. We can manipulate things and say, look what God did for me. We have some friends that went out and bought a house out in the middle of the country, and they're like an hour away from church and from the job and stuff like that. And they're like, look at God. He gave us this wonderful, beautiful house out here that we've been looking for the last 10 years. We finally found one out in the country, and we have to go over a big, huge mountain pass to get to church, and it's snowing, and we can't come to church next Sunday because there's too much snow. So God gave you a house out in the middle of the country so you cannot be in church the next Sunday. I can't go to work for the next week because I can't get over the mountain pass. So God gave you a house, the desires of your heart, so you can miss work the next week. I don't think that's the way God works. So sometimes we'll do stuff like that and we'll still get what we asked for. Nation of Israel, we want a king, and they got a king, right? They got the desires of their heart. They got it, but the king wasn't the best king, the best situation for them, right? Ultimately, what God wants and desires for us is the best thing for us, even if it may hurt and even if it's not what you want. So, does God truly give you the desires of your heart? Is that statement, God gives you the desires of your heart, blanket like that, a correct statement? Well, it's important to put this verse in context. So look at this verse and the surrounding verses around it in Psalms 37, verse 3. And we're going to read all the way through the verse 12 so you can see it fully in context and understand what that means. God will give you the desires of your heart. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and practice faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. See, there's that verse right there, right? Let's continue on so we see it in context. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he will bring it to pass. Verse 6. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your judgment as the noonday. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret because of those who prosper in their way, because of those who make wicked schemes. Verse 8. Let go of anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret. It surely leads to evil deeds. For evildoers will be cut off, and those who hope in the Lord will inherit the earth. For yet a little while, and the wicked will not be. You will look diligently for their place, and it will not be. But the meek will inherit the earth, and will delight themselves in the abundance of peace. The wicked plot against the righteous, and grind their teeth against them. These are really if-then statements. When I was programming computer language and basic programming back in junior high, we learned basic programming, and you have if-then loops. So if it's this, then it'll go to this. If it's not, then it'll do this. So you always put that in there. If yes, then this. If no, then this, right? Those are if-then statements. This is what God is saying. If then, if you do this, then this will happen. Or you do this, then God will do something and this will happen. If you trust in the Lord and do good, then he will allow you to dwell in the land. If you delight yourself in the Lord, then he will give you desires of your heart. If you commit your way to the Lord and also trust him, then he will bring it to pass. If you rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him, and you let go of anger and forsake wrath, then the wicked will not be, and you will inherit the earth. So the statement, he will give you the desires of the heart, starts off with and gives you the if you delight yourself in the Lord. If you delight yourself in the Lord. The word delight means literally to live delicately. That's the literal translation. To be tender, to have life of easiness and tenderness. If you delight yourself in the Lord, if you're tender to him. The idea has a meaning here that we should seek joy, seek peace, seek happiness in God. The tenderness of life, the easiness of life in God. It has the underlying meaning that we are to do it, not feel it. Oh, I feel happy. No, we're to do it. We are to seek after. We are to delight, seeking after peace, seeking after joy, seeking after the contentment level in God. It is more of a decision of the mind rather than one to the heart. So if you delight yourself in the Lord, if you make your decision in your mind that you will seek after your happiness, your peace, your joy in God, then he will give you the desires of your heart. The if-then statement. All right. It's not just you get whatever you desire. There's an if first. And I think we missed the if. We kind of missed out on the if part, right? Our delight must be first in the Lord. It must be a priority in our lives. For instance, what about a husband delighting himself in his wife? I love my wife. I delight myself in her. I miss her when she goes to the store. I want to be around her as much as possible. We like hanging out together. I like hanging out together. I don't know if she does as much, but I like hanging out together, right? I would never purposely do anything to embarrass her. I would never purposely do anything to hurt her. Why? Because I delight in her. I want to find my peace and joy in life with her. I enjoy spending time with her. I want to know her and I want to be with her. It's the same with God. Spend time with God. Walk godly and ask him how you can bring him honor, how you can bring him glory, how you can bring joy and happiness in your life through him. I believe having desires are commendable, because who wouldn't have a desire? But let's take that one step further. Have you ever had a desire when it came to the things of God, like salvation for others, restoration with others, compassion for others? See, those are all good things, right? I desire that this person be saved. I desire that we have a restoration of our friendship. I desire that compassion is going to come towards these people. How about a relationship with God? Do we truly desire to have that closeness, that intimate conversation with God? Our relationship with God should be on the level and to the point that it supersedes any experience we have. So if I'm struggling with someone in our life and our personalities clash, or we're struggling, whatever, my desire should always be to God that he's going to fix that. I should always have him first and as a priority for everything else. Our relationship with God ought to bring us more joy, more happiness, more peace. If you stop and say, yeah, church Sunday morning, like it's always a Sunday, it's every Sunday. I just like to take one weekend where I don't go to church. That'd be so much better. If you ever catch yourself saying that, you're in a place where you shouldn't be, because you're not really delighting in the Lord. Now you're just going through the motions of going to church. Or you wake up in the morning, you're like, I just don't feel like reading my Bible today or praying today. I'm just so tired. I'd rather just watch TV and relax a little bit. And God will understand. Maybe your priorities are off. There's nothing wrong with reading or nothing wrong with not reading. But when you start having that attitude, you begin to get your focus off and you're not delighting in the Lord. I'm not saying reading your Bible every day is delighting in the Lord, because we could do that wrongly too, right? But when we start having that feeling, our priorities are wrong. That's when we got to check ourselves and say, wait a minute, we're not looking at this the right way. We are to delight ourselves in the Lord by seeking after God as our greatest pleasure and to seek the things near to his heart. Listen to this exchange between God and Moses in Exodus. When Moses is sincere about seeking God, it's a beautiful statement, and most times we just kind of skip over it when we're looking at the story of Moses. So look at it with me and catch what Moses is saying here in Exodus 33. The Lord spoke to Moses face to face, just as a man speaks to his friend. I like that, right? That's a pretty cool thought, right? When he returned to this camp, his servant Joshua, the son of Nun, a young man, did not depart from the tent. Moses said to the Lord, "See, you say to me, bring up this people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. Yet you have said, I know you by name, and you have also found grace in my sight. Now therefore I pray you, if you have found favor in your sight, show me your way, and I may know you, that I may find favor in your sight. Consider too that this nation is your people." And he said, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." Then he said to him, this is God speaking to Moses. This is Moses speaking back to God. "If your presence does not go with us, do not bring us up from here. For how will it be known that I have found favor in your sight, I and your people? Is it not by your going with us, so that we may be distinguished, I and your people, from all the people on the face of the earth?" The Lord said to Moses, "I will do this thing of which you have spoken, for you have found favor in my sight, and I know you by name." And then Moses said, "I pray, show me your glory." Now, there's a few points that kind of stand out with me on this passage here. It's a beautiful conversation that Moses is having with God, and it ought to be kind of the same thought that we have when speaking to God. It may not be the exact same situation, but the exact thought that we should have. So going back to where this starts with, we can go back. This starts off with Moses going to speak with God. And because of idolatry, the pillar of smoke had been removed from the tabernacle at this point. And Moses has a desire to meet with God again and restore the relationship, that the smoke, the Shekinah glory of God will come back to the tent and with the nation of Israel. So Moses goes into the tabernacle, and all the people come out with the tents to see how God would respond. The pillar of cloud returned, and all the people rejoiced and worshiped God right where they're at. The Bible says that they were out, wherever they're at in their tents, they looked up and saw the Shekinah glory, the cloud back again, and they're all like, "Woohoo, God's back with us." God began to speak with Moses as a friend would speak to a friend. Wow. What an amazing thought to think about, just speaking with God as a friend. Why can't we speak to God like that now? We can. There's nothing stopping us from having a conversation with God as you would a friend. "Hey, friend, you want to go have some a burger with me and some fries?" "Sure, I'll buy." "That's awesome. I'll buy next time." "Excellent. You know what? Never mind. I'll buy dessert." And we had this wonderful conversation. "Who wants to drive?" "I'll drive." "You can drive the next time." Great. And we have this conversation we're having with a friend. We can have that same conversation with God. But we always feel like we got to have this like, "Oh, Father, thou art with me there, Lord. Thou have privilege and glory." And what are the words I'm supposed to say? Right? We kind of have this idea that we can't just have a conversation with God as a friend. But anyway, so he talks to him as a friend. I love this, right? And so God told Moses to go into the land that God had provided. And Moses asked him for a favor from God. He asked for God to show him his way, that Moses may know God. Then he made this incredible statement. He said, "If your presence does not go with us, do not bring us up from here." If you're not going with us, God, I don't want to go. I want to be right where you're at. Wherever you go, God, that's where I want to be. If you're going to tell us to go there and you're not with us, I don't want to go. Right? Think about that. Moses didn't ask for jewels or success. He didn't ask for dreams to be fulfilled. He didn't ask for blessings or even a place to have his own. He didn't ask for peace. He didn't ask for a roadmap for his life. Tell me where I'm going next year. He didn't even ask God to protect him and his family. He asked two things. He asked God to know him more. "God, I want to know you more. And wherever you go, I'm going. Wherever I go, I want you to be there with me." The desire of his heart was to know God and be in his presence. So God gave him the desires of his heart because he delighted in the Lord. Catch that? He delighted in God. Do you desire to be in God's presence more than anything? Or do you want God to follow your desires? What are your motives when you're seeking God? So stop and think about, what is your plans in life? And we all have them. We may have plans for retirement. We may have plans for a home. We may have plans for a car. We may have plans for our financial situation. We may have plans for starting a family. We may have plans for whatever. We all have plans. What are the motives behind those plans? And then stop and think, am I just doing this because this is what I want? Or have I delighted in the Lord with my life and he's leading me that way? God, if you want me to retire this way, I'll do it, but you better be with me when I'm going. I don't want to be anywhere you're not. God, if you want me to remodel my home and you're going to allow me to do that, wonderful, God, but I want you to be there with me while I'm doing it because I don't want to be anywhere you're not. God, if you allow me to buy a new car, that is awesome. I love buying a new car, and thank you for giving me the money to do it. But God, I want to make sure you're there with me. My wife and I went to go buy a new car right before we went to Utah. Used car, not a new car, a used car. And we prayed. We prayed hard. We squinted harder, right? And we asked God, God, go with us. We're about to go to Utah. We're going to buy a vehicle that's going to travel all the way to Utah. They got snow up there. We'd like to have four-wheel drive, and we haven't drive on snow very much, and so we like to. And we're praying, and God said, look at this wonderful Suzuki Sidekick. And you can have this. It's got four-wheel drive, and it's got this. And we were able to buy it cash, and everything was like, whoa, this is awesome. Thank you, God. And we felt God was with us. And everything was wonderful. And we're driving, and we load it all up. And this is like 2 weeks before we go to Utah. We load it all up. And then on the way to Utah, it overheats. And we just thought it was a radiator. We fixed the radiator. We get to Utah and still have a problem. It's starting to knock. Right? The guy says, oh, you have a head gasket that's done, and you got to fix your head gasket and take the engine apart, put a new head gasket on, put it back together. Okay, great. But you have a crazy engine. You have the original engine from Japan or China, or whatever. Normally Sidekicks, they have the American version or whatever, but you have a special kind of engine that's we have to get the parts from over there. So it's going to take like 2 weeks to get the parts. And it's going to be $1,500. And if you remember my story I told you before, we had $1,500 cash when we moved to Utah. We had $1,500 to pay for it, right? And then after about 2 weeks, it started to overheat again. Oh, yeah, it wasn't a head gasket. It was a head. That's a cracked head. You need a whole new engine. That's about $6,000. You should just trade this car in for a new car, right? And I was like, God, you know. And I went, wait a minute. Did I not ask God? Right? Did God not, God, where I go, or what you, so was God with me in the broken down car? Yeah, he gave me the $1,500, right? And if you know the rest of the story, maybe you've heard it before. We go to the dealership, and we get to the dealership, and the dealership said, oh, it doesn't matter whether you have a blown engine or not. We're just going to take it to the auction. And we'll get the same value whether it's blown engine or not. Here's the value of the car. No problem at all. I'm like, what? That used car dealership never did that, right? And here's our used car dealer, salesman. He's going to take you to the used car lot. You pick you out a good car. And he's like, yeah, we don't have any four-wheel drive cars. We don't really need them around here. What? I thought we're in Utah. Yeah, but the snow is not that big of a deal. You'll be fine. Oh, okay. Where are you from? Oh, I'm from Texas. Oh, really? I'm sitting in the car with my mom's cousin. What? Like, I didn't even know my mom had a cousin that lived in Utah, and now he's sitting in the car. So I got to meet him, talk with him, talk about Christ. And he goes, hey, yeah, I just went to visit your grandpa last week. Happened to, right? And I have all his war diaries and stuff like that from World War II that he doesn't talk about. He said, he let me borrow them because I'm a war buff. And I said, he's never talked to me about that stuff. I would love to see them. So I went to go get the car the next week. He gave me all the war diaries, and then he died the next week. And I still have my grandpa's war diaries. And I thought, so God was with me when I got that broken down car way back in Texas and had to repair it for $1,500. So you look at the story and you follow it all the way out. Like at the time, you're like, did something go wrong? And like, God knew exactly. So when we talk about giving as desires, my desire was to get a better car that didn't break down. Right? That would have been my desire. But I didn't ask that. I prayed, God, you be with us no matter what car I get. And when you pray that, it may not go the way you think it's going to go, but no, it's going to be for your good. And it's going to be something that's going to be good that's going to come out of that. So I told all that story to talk about look, when we're seeking God out, God, wherever we do, whatever our desires are at, I got to delight myself in the Lord first. Be with him. God, I want to be in your presence. I don't care what's going on over there, as long as you're there with me, as Moses is saying. There's a story about a proud young man who comes to Socrates. And he goes to Socrates, and Socrates, I want knowledge from you, Socrates, because Socrates is real smart, right? So he walked up to the philosopher. Oh, great Socrates, I came to get knowledge from you. Socrates recognized the pride of this man's heart, and he led the young man through the streets to the sea and brought him down chest deep in the water. The young man's like, oh, this is what great wisdom from Socrates, right? He said, what do you want? And he said, oh, knowledge, oh wise Socrates. And he took the young man was smiling, whatever. Socrates put his hands on the man's shoulders and pushed him underwater. 30 seconds later, Socrates laid him back up. Socrates, what do you want? Well, I want wisdom, oh great wise Socrates. Socrates pushed him back down under water. 30 seconds, 35, 40 seconds. Socrates bring him back out of water. He's breathing. The man's gasping. Young man, what do you want? Between heavy breaths, knowledge. Oh, Socrates, knowledge. Great Socrates. Socrates takes him, shoves him back down in the water. 40 seconds go by, 45, 50, and up again. He goes, what do you want, young man? Air. I want air. And Socrates says, when your want of knowledge is just as you want it for air, then you will have knowledge. See, when we get to a place in our life where we desire more than anything to be in God's presence and God to be with us wherever we're at, when that becomes the entire focus, we want it more than air in our life, then we're delighting ourselves in the Lord, and you begin to see results coming from that. So how often do you come to God with a list of needs and desires? God, here's my prayer for you. I have this prayer list. Dear God, number one, number two, number three, right? We go through our prayer checklist, wanting the handout and a blessing, wanting our dreams fulfilled and the desires of my heart to be given to me with good intentions and seemingly looking for good things. Even with saying, I'm asking for salvation for somebody. God, I want them to be saved, and then somehow they die at some point and you never see results from their salvation. And you're like, why didn't you save them before they died, God? And you get mad at God. Maybe God was working in their lives the entire time, but they kept rejecting God. It's not God's fault, right? But we'll get upset at God because he didn't give us the desires of our heart. How often we come to him with the idea that we can go through anything if we knew that we were in his presence. God, I don't care what happens. As long as you are there with me, I can make it. If we have found grace, just like Moses had, if we have found grace in God when we accepted Christ as our Savior, if we have come to a place in our life where we say, God, you're right there with me. You live inside me. The presence of God lives in me. I'm in your presence wherever I go. You're going with me. And I desire more than anything to make sure I am looking at you in all things. But sometimes we want God to be with us emotionally, not physically. God, I want you to make me happy with the desires of my heart. That's not the way it works. When God says do something, we should want God to be there with us. And then when we're doing it, know that he's there, even if it's not making us happy. I've seen many people that have figured out what they do with life. They're like, oh, life is great. Everything's, I'm fulfilling my dreams and I'm doing it all. I've even seen pastors and missionaries. Man, I'm living the life. Everything I desire is happening. Everything's perfect and wonderful. But they're doing it in their own actions. As we delight in God, as we seek to know him more, seek to be in his presence, seek to be satisfied and filled with him in his presence and nothing more, to be filled with the presence of God, just like Moses is seeking him out, then our desires to be like him. Christ says, come and learn of me. And we say, God, I want to know you more. I want you to know who I am, and I want to know who you are. I want to be in your presence everywhere I go. And then his glory is shown in and through our lives, not for our own glory, not for our own desires, not for our own pleasures, not for our own exaltation, but for his glory, his desires, his pleasure, his exaltation. The amazing thing to me is that God desires for us to be in his presence as much as we should desire to be in his presence. God wants us to be with him. God created us to be in fellowship with him, to be hanging out with us, to walk with us. Right? He created Adam and Eve to walk in the garden with him. He still desires that for us today. He desires to be with you. When we accept Christ, the Spirit of God enters into our hearts and lives, and Christ becomes our intercessor, and we're instantly in the presence of God, spiritually speaking. But sometimes we want God to be there, like make us feel good. And just like in Moses' case, when we want to spend time alone with God in the temple, we want to hang out with God at church or hang out with God in the special times. God says, great, but you got to get out of the tent. You got to go out of the place. You got to go and teach other people. That's fine, God, I'll go. As long as you go with me. I'll leave this special place. I'll leave my quiet place. I'll leave my prayer closet. I'll leave those places. I'll leave the church building. I'll leave it, but you go with me. I want you to be there with me. And when that happens, you too will begin to delight in the Lord. You'll spend intimate time with God, and you'll allow him to fill you with his knowledge of himself, and you begin to see things as God sees them. Delighting in God means to making a decision, just like Moses, to know God more and to be in his presence. When you begin to have this kind of intimate, close communion with God, you'll begin to find yourself asking for the things that God desires. Asking what things to make him happy. What are the things that he desires around you? God, how can I help make your kingdom bigger? God, how can I make your kingdom better? God, how can I show you glory in your life, because I'm seeking you and I'm wanting to be in your presence. I'm wanting to know you more, and my heart is beginning to lean towards you, God. And God, all I want is for you. And the first prayer request will not be, God, please take care of this situation in my life. And God, fix this. And God, please fix this. Here's my list of all the people I want you to save. And here's all the people I want you to heal. No, my first prayer will be, God, I want to be with you. God, I want to know you more. And God, today when I wake up and I go about my life, I just want to go through life being in your presence. Wherever you're at, I want to be. And God, I want to learn from you all day long. All that I want. I don't care what happens, God. I don't care how bad the day goes. I just want to know that I'm right there with you and you're right there with me. When we do this, we'll clearly see that it was never about us in the first place. It was always about God and God alone. And Jesus' model prayer, he gives us this indication and guidance. Your kingdom come, right? Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I heard this once. If your desires are presented to the Lord, if you look to him, he will eventually bring them to fruition if you remain obedient to him. That's not what this verse means at all. It doesn't mean if you look to God and obey him, you'll get what you want. Because then people are looking and serving God just to get the desires of their heart. Oh, if you'll obey God, he'll give you blessings and he'll answer your prayers and he'll give you the desires of your heart. We just read that if-then statement. It didn't say anything about obedience. It said, delight yourself in the Lord, then he will give you the desires of your heart. When we delight in God, when we realize that our happiness, our peace, our joy is in him, that he becomes our desire and our hearts are full of happiness, joy, and peace because we have him and he is all I want. I've heard this statement as well. The Lord delights in blessing his people with the heart's desire. Take time to ask what the future holds for you. Then commit to obeying God and watch the realization of his promise. No, again, right? We don't obey God so we can get things from him. We don't obey God to get blessings. We don't obey for none of that has anything to do with delighting ourselves in the Lord. Oh, if you obey God, then he'll give you. No, it says delight yourself in the Lord. Delight yourself. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. All those things will be added unto you if you do those things first. But we don't. We come to God. Here's my list of things I need. So here's a list of things I'll do for you, God. And if I do these things for you, then you give me these things. First, we have our checklist. Read my Bible. Done. Second on the checklist, go to church. Did that twice. Right? Give. Oh, give. Well, if I give a couple bucks, all right, good. I gave, right? And then we start justifying what levels of doing. We have this checklist, right? Where are we learning this checklist from? Sunday school. Went to church and they gave us a long list of stuff to do. And so I just have to, I've been building this list for years. Right? Whenever I see homeless people, I will give them food. I did that. So I did like 90% of everything on my list, God. So I want you to give me 90% of the desires of my heart. That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. It's not the way God planned it. It's not the way God spoke it. It's not the way God asked you to do it. He said, delight yourself in me. Make your heart tender to me. Have your life tender through me. Have peace and joy and happiness through me. Find contentment in me. Learn to know me more, and I will know you more, and we'll get to know each other more, and we'll walk as friendships more. And we do that, your heart begins to align yourself with God, and his heart is aligning yourself with you, and the spirit that's in you is aligning with the spirit that's in him. And just life is just going great because we're with him, no matter what's going on around us. Right? Snowmageddon 2021 is happening all around us, but we're still delighting ourselves in the Lord. Right? 6 hurricanes come and hit Port Arthur this year. It doesn't matter. We're still delighting ourselves in the Lord. Someone said, you just spoke that out loud. Now it's going to happen. No, that's not the way it works. If we're delighting ourselves in the Lord, it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. Delight yourselves in God. It makes our heart full with his desires. And then his desires become our desires. And then all of a sudden, he gives us the desires of our heart because our desires are his desires. As we humble ourselves before the amazing God, he will prepare our hearts to hear his desires. We'll prepare our hearts to want his desires. Today, people everywhere are searching for happiness. They're searching for joy. They're searching for peace. They're searching in all the wrong places. They're even searching in religion. And it's still the wrong place. It's not in religion. They search for it in the world. They search for it in religion. They search for it inside themselves. If you just look deep within yourselves, you'll find the strength to pull yourselves up. No. We can only find these things in Christ. How can we live in the presence of God? The person who is born again already has God's presence with them. Know that. If you have accepted Jesus Christ as your Savior, he's already in you and you're already in his presence. You can't leave. He can't leave you. You're there. And he's stuck with you. Right? So we don't have to ask, God, be in my presence. God, if I go out these doors, I got to make sure you're there with me. He already is. But we have to know it. We have to believe it. We have to live our lives like it's true. We have to understand that the peace, the love, the joy, the happiness, all those things, the contentment, all that's already in us. As we delight ourselves in the Lord, we'll see that more and more. As we learn of him, as he says, we'll see that in our lives come out more and more. Like, I didn't know I could be this at peace. I didn't realize that was in me. It was always there. Ever since you accepted Christ as your Savior, it was always there. You just didn't delight yourselves in the Lord. You didn't delight yourself in him. And so you didn't know it was there. You kept looking for something else. Beyond that, we need to continue learning about God, learning of him and gaining knowledge. And if we learn of him, we begin to hear about him and what he wants. To do that, we must be in his word. We must gather with his church and know that you're always in his presence. Some 2,000 years ago, something like that, a little bit more than that, 12 disciples had a desire of being Christ's right-hand man when he set up his kingdom, walking with Jesus, right? God in the flesh, doing miracles everywhere. I had a desire of my heart to be your right-hand man. When you get up in your kingdom, I want to be on your right hand. And even one asked, all right, 2 brothers, one be on his right, one be on his left, right? They had spent time with God in the flesh for 3 years and still didn't get the point. The reason is because they had 4,000 years of tradition in their heads that were still there, that they kept looking back to that tradition. They kept looking back to the religion. They kept looking back to the old way of thinking and never stopping and listening to the man who's right in front of them, telling them this is not the way it's done. They didn't bother just being in the presence and seeking him for knowledge. They were taking what they heard before and kind of heard what they said here and putting it all together. It's like, come, learn of me. Come, walk with me. Come, listen to me. That's what he was saying. They had a desire for fame and acknowledgement. Right? They had just wasted 3 years of their life, and they wanted something for that. Like God, we got to give us something. Like 3 years of our life, and I want everyone to know. I want to be justified. I want the whole world to see the rationalization of me following you for 3 years. My mother-in-law thought I was crazy, and God, help me out here. You're gonna die? What? No, that's not the way. No, that's not the way it works. I had a desire to be in your kingdom. Right? Their whole head was messed up because they weren't listening to him. Christ told them over and over and over and over again. They would have to die on the cross. It was on the Old Testament. It was written there, black and white. They had most of it memorized. They still didn't hear it because they were looking at it from a lens of religion and tradition. They wanted that life now, and they didn't not submit to his desires. They didn't delight themselves with the Lord. They delighted themselves in the traditions of man and the desires of their own heart. They missed being in his presence. If you're truly delighting in him, trusting in him, committing your way to him, he will give you the desires of your heart because your desires are his desires. You need to come to the end of yourself and truly ask God to change your desires into his. You need to come to a place in your life that you abandon your personal wants, your personal desires. You abandon the tradition of religion to simply just turn to God and say, God, I want to learn of you. I want to delight myself in you. I want to make my heart tender towards you, God. And all that I seek is you. I'm seeking the kingdom of God first above anything else. What do you desire in your life today? Is it what God desires? Or you're trying to make God change his mind to match yours? Would you commit to God this morning? Would you commit that you want to seek him? That you want to seek him for knowledge? That you want to seek him to know him more? To seek to be in his presence openly, walking in his presence every day? Will you commit to delight yourself in God today, and his desires become your desires, and then he will give you the desires of your heart because your heart is in him and you're delighting yourself in him? If this. And then if that happens, here's what he said to Moses, and here's what he'll say to you. I will do this thing of which you have spoken, for you have found favor in my sight, and I know you by name. Don't you want to hear that from God today? Delight yourself in him. Make your heart tender towards him and every single thing and every day. And we'll respond to him, I pray, show me your glory, just as Moses said to him that day. Let's stand and pray and worship him together.